In today, and joining us in studio now, candidate for Congress, 2nd Congressional District here in Mississippi, Mr. Ron Eller joins us. Ron, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here and get to talk with you and your listening audience in SuperTalk. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm ready to talk about politics and what we can do to change America and to change the course of the 2nd District of Mississippi. There's a radical element that's been afoot in our country, and they're trying to make us into a socialist country, and that's not what we're about.
You know, I hadn't noticed that.
You had not noticed?
No, I hadn't noticed that, Ron.
Well,
it's all day, every day, it seems like.
That's right.
Nonstop assault. Before we get to that, though, you were telling me and you showed me, and we were talking about how you wound up deciding to run for Congress, and you had signs thrown at you from all directions, didn't you?
Yes, sir. It actually transpired over a few decades. When I was a young soldier long ago, I had been Soldier of the Year, I'd been Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year, I was Drug and Alcohol Person of the Year, I was nominated in the Sergeant Morales Club. I went from the ranks of E1 to E7. I was a warrant officer and retired as a captain. When I was a young E6 stationed at West Point, there was this fellow named Ronald Reagan, and he stopped me and he said, "Sergeant Eller, you're energetic, you have a great foundational knowledge of the nation and a natural love of country, and we need people like you in office. You need to run for office." Well, I didn't retire from the military until August of 1999, and after retiring from the military, I came to live in Mississippi, and it's the longest place I've ever lived. I've lived in every state on the East Coast, basically, 6 years in the South Pacific, Panama, Egypt, Israel, 3 years in Germany. Shoot, I moved my wife and oldest son 18 times, and they didn't go to places like Egypt, Israel, and Panama with me, but that's another story. So anyhow, it was in February of 2019 when AOC got the deal thrown out of Queens, New York for Amazon, and I went to an economic developer here in Hinds County and tried to sell him on this idea that we need to get involved with this, and I could not convince him. Then October of 2020, there was a little girl in Simpson County, Panola, who was booted out of school because her mask read, "Jesus loves me." Her name was Lydia Booth. And when I saw that news story on the local news, it really made me mad. And I started studying the Mississippi State Constitution and found, according to the Mississippi State Constitution, Article 3, Section 18, the Holy Bible is part of our school system and cannot be removed. Then when President Trump was acquitted the second time, February 16th, 2021, I went to work a couple of days later, dressed kind of like I am right now, and my boss looked at me and he's like, "Ron, what are you doing?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And he used some colorful language. "You're going to a job interview this afternoon." I said, "No, sir. If I was going to a job interview, I would have told you that. I have respect for you." He said, "Don't lie to me. I can see how you're dressed." And I told him what I was thinking, and he's like, "That's crazy. Why would you think you ought to run for Congress? You apparently don't know anything about the 2nd Congressional District." And I said, "Yes, I do." I said, "I know the district is 65.2% black. It's D plus 14. There are 26 counties, now 30 counties. I could tell him every county seat, et cetera." And he's like, "I never thought anybody would know these kind of things." Well, the following day, my wife and I would go to Sam's Club. It's storming. And I got out of the vehicle, and there was this bright, shiny little gold disc laying on the ground. And I saw it, and I bent down, and I picked it up. And when I did, it stopped raining. And when I turned it over, my heart skipped a beat because it's a lapel pin, and it reads, "United States Congress, as you've seen for yourself." And I took that to be my Jonah and the whale moment. I showed it to my wife, but we really didn't talk about it. And then I go back to St. Dominic's, and I'm talking with one of the clergy, and he said, "Well, did you have the hard talk with your wife?" I said, "Heck no." I showed it to her. That's a mission statement. She's a military wife. I don't need to say anything else. And he said, "Ron, that's not true. I'm going to see you in the hallway in the next few days, and you need to have a different story for me." And I thought about it all day, and I said, he's right. I went home and I prayed on it. I got my Bible out and I opened it. It opened to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 1 and verse 23 was at the top of that page. So I read 23 through the end of the chapter, and it talked about corrupt governments and how God will fix it. And I said, well, I got my mandate to talk to my wife. She's like, "Well, Ron, I really don't like this. You got a military retirement. We have a side business, Buckwater Enterprises, making things in the outdoor industry. You've been in St. Dominic's for more than 10 years. I'd rather see you retire, but I understand what you're saying, that you took an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, and foreign and domestic. And this is not about ourselves, but this is about our grandchildren and about the nation and how we need to preserve the founding of our country."
Now, let me ask you this, because I don't want to run out of time here. I don't want to interrupt, but I want to make sure we get everything in here. There are some people that would look at it. You're running for the 2nd Congressional District, Congressman Benny Thompson's district. There are some people, I'm sure, that have looked at you and said, you don't have a chance.
I hear that quite frequently. Well, I actually have a major announcement today. Just as of today, there's an organization called Black PAC. That's BLAK, which stands for Black, Latino, Asian, and Knowledgeable. They've reached out and endorsed me. They've also endorsed folks like Herschel Walker and Tim Scott. I think I'm in pretty good, steadfast company. And as you folks out there on the internet can see, I probably don't look like I'm very Black, Latino, or Asian. But they understand, and I'm the kind of guy that will work with people, that I have experience as a military leader. I have experience as a business leader. I have experience as a healthcare provider. I've been serving the nation and the people of the state of Mississippi for decades now, and it's about working together. It goes back to Luke 11:17. A kingdom that is divided is a house that will fall. And when you think about races, there's only one race. Acts 17:26. From one man he built all nations. And we in Mississippi and the nation, we have one race. And we have one thing that's in common. We're all Americans. When I was in the military, I developed a thought process that I call foxhole mentality. And foxhole mentality says the first thing you figure out in the foxhole, there's no such thing as an atheist. Everybody believes in a higher power. The next thing you figure out in the foxhole is you don't care what that person next to you looks like, gender, race, sexual preference, none of that stuff matters. You look for one thing and one thing only. Is there an American flag on that shoulder? Because your life depends on them and their life depends on you. And since I've lived all over the world, I can tell you Mississippi more closely reflects foxhole mentality. People in the state of Mississippi get along. They work together. We all know interracial couples. We all have neighbors who are of different races, and we work with different races, and nobody cares. And that's one of those great secrets about Mississippi. Now, you go to New York, and they would tell you, all the people in Mississippi are a bunch of rednecks, hillbillies, and racists, and that's just not true. And we know that.
That's exactly right. We've got about a minute and a half left. Want to ask you, it's kind of a standard election question, but I want to give you your shot at it. If you're elected, what's the first thing you're tackling?
The first thing that needs to be tackled, I would tell you that we need to look at term limits. Psalms 109:8. May his days be few, may another leader take his place. But when you look at the 2nd Congressional District, we need to talk about free enterprise, limited government, individual liberties, national defense, and traditional values. I have what I call an E3 platform. E1 deals with education. And not only am I talking about the education of our youth, but we need to do major prison reform. We need to be taking these prisoners and breaking this chain so that we can return them to society as productive members. E2 deals with economics. Economics is going to be a hot-button issue going forward forever and a day, particularly taxation. Why is it that we have to keep rebuying the family home, the family farm, the family business? Rich folks, they get their stuff put in trust, and they're not paying this. This is paid by the poor folks, the middle class, and it's just generational theft instead of allowing us to build generational wealth. E3 deals with energy. Energy is the lifeblood of the American economy. And I don't care whether we're talking about oil, natural gas, clean coal, hydroelectric, hydrogen, nuclear, solar, wind. We need all forms of energy. And eventually a clean form of energy will win out. But at this time, you cannot hamstring our country and our economy for a pie-in-the-sky dream. We need to be using all the resources that we have. Not only is this an economic issue, but this is a national security issue. And these are the things that I plan on talking about. I plan on being the biggest cheerleader you've ever seen for the state of Mississippi. We need growth in Mississippi. We don't need an exodus of population.
And we've been dealing with that for a while. Before we get out of here, do you have a website or anything where people can go?
You can find me on the internet at, of course, www.voteroneller.com. My phone number is real easy. It's 888-ELLER22, because in 22 we're taking back America. That's 888-355-3722. And unlike Joe Biden, I know my phone number.
That was a cheap shot, and I love it. That was well, awesome. That was a great end, a little sting there right at the end.
Yeah, well, you know what they said, and the truth shall set you free.
So, sometimes it'll surprise you when it does it, too.
Yeah.
One thing before you get out of here that I do want to make sure that we do, and sometimes, occasionally people have told me, Well, you say that all the time. They get tired of that. Personally, I don't care. Thank you for your service to our country.
I appreciate that, sir. And I look forward to continuing to serve the people of America and Mississippi. God bless America, and God bless the good people of the state of Mississippi. I'm Ron Eller, and you can find me at voteroneller.com.
Ron Eller, a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District in the state of Mississippi. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming by, sir.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Take care of yourself and keep searching the parking lot. You don't know what you're going to find next.
You're right about that.
You never know what you're going to look down and where it's going to lead you before you're done. We will continue here in the Element Wealth Studios on middays on SuperTalk Mississippi next.